Hi, my name is Davin Charney. I'm a lawyer practicing in the city of Toronto in Canada, and I'm making this video for the Centre for Police Accountability, which is a group also based in Toronto. And for more information about that group, you can check out their website at c4pa.ca or follow the link below. This is the first video in a series of videos that we hope to make for the Centre for Police Accountability. The issue that I'll be discussing in this video is to answer the question of whether or not you have to show identification to the police when they ask you to do so. And generally speaking, the answer to that is no. There's no obligation on the part of people to show identification to police when asked to do so. The police, of course, can ask a person to show ID. What I'm suggesting is that a person can exercise their right to refuse. And that opinion is based on Canadian court decisions, the common law, as well as the Charter of Rights. Now, in the Charter of Rights, there's specifically two rights that I think are important, that are expressly mentioned in the Charter: the right to be free from arbitrary detention, and also the right to be free from unreasonable search and seizure. And although not expressly mentioned in the Charter, it's been read in by courts in Canada that we have the right to remain silent. So if you're having an interaction with police and they're asking you to provide identification, you can assert those three different rights. Also, there's a useful court decision coming out of a court in Alberta, and it's the case of R.V. Honorowski, and you can follow the link below to find that decision, but it specifically addresses this issue of, do you have to show ID to the police? And that court, the Alberta court, in that decision says that generally you do not have to, and it cites a previous case, a British case, Rice and Connolly. And this case of Rice and Connolly has been cited not only by that case, but by other Canadian cases to establish the principle that you don't have to generally show ID to the police. And I'll just give you a quick quote from the Rice and Connolly decision. So in that case, the judge said, "It seems quite clear to me that though every citizen has a moral duty, if you like, a social duty to assist the police, there is no legal duty to that effect, and indeed the whole basis of the common law is that right of the individual to refuse to answer questions put to them by persons in authority." So generally, you don't have to provide identification when asked by the police. However, there are some circumstances where the law would require you to show identification. So what are those specific circumstances? Firstly, if you're engaged in a regulated activity, sometimes the regulations would suggest that you do have to show ID. So for example, if you're crossing the border, you'll have to show ID. If you're driving, there's various provincial statutes that would require you to show identification in the form of a license. If you're in a restricted movie, you may have to show ID in order to establish you are of age to be in that movie. And similarly, if you're consuming alcohol, you may have to show ID to purchase alcohol or to be in an establishment that dispenses alcohol. You have to show ID in order to establish that you're of age. So regulated activities, sometimes you will have to show identification to the police. Another exception is if the police approach you and they've found you committing some type of provincial offense, you'll have to identify yourself, or you could be charged criminally with obstruct police. So this is an important point, I think, because you don't want to be found by the police committing a provincial offense, and then if you refuse to ID yourself, all of a sudden you are charged with a criminal offense, which is much more serious. So if the police are telling you that they found you trespassing or jaywalking or committing some type of liquor offense, for example, having liquor in a public place, or you're riding your bike without a horn or a light, and the police want to give you a ticket for that, you should show identification, or the consequence of not doing that, as I mentioned, is you could be charged and convicted of obstruct police. And there's a Supreme Court of Canada decision, R.V. Moore, it's a 1979 decision. You can also find a link to that decision below. And in that case, Mr. Moore was riding his bike, committed some infraction. Police wanted to give him a ticket and he refused to identify himself, and he was charged and eventually convicted of obstruct police. Now, a third scenario where you'll probably want to show identification to the police or identify yourself is if you're arrested. Now, again, if you're arrested and the police want to charge you, if you don't identify yourself, firstly, you could be further charged with obstruct police. But also, you could be held in custody pending a determination of who it is you are. The police will not want to release you from custody if they don't know who you are. So, in that situation, if you're arrested, you probably want to tell the police your name and your date of birth and your address in order to secure your release. Now, two very important things to remember when dealing with the police. Firstly, never lie to the police. Again, you could be charged with obstruct police for lying. So it's much better to assert your right to remain silent instead of lying to the police. Generally speaking, bad idea to lie to the police. Also, when interacting with the police, you should remain, I think it's in your best interest to remain respectful and polite, but assert your rights to the full extent. And that way, if you're respectful and politeful, you can avoid escalating the situation beyond your control. I think it's important to assert our rights. If we don't assert our rights, then there's really no point in having rights. So, in order to assist people in asserting their right to refuse to provide identification, the Center for Police Accountability has produced these No ID cards, which, as you can see, look like a piece of identification, but they're a non-piece of identification. And on the back of the card, you can see that there's some legal information that you can share with the police. And so when the police ask you, will you show me some ID, you can tell them that, well, I'll show you some no ID. And that's the point of the card. If you'd like to order these cards, you can contact the Center for Police Accountability through the website. There's a contact feature on the page, and you can send an email through that feature. So that's the end of this video. Thank you very much for taking the time to watch. I look forward to sharing information with you on other legal topics of interest in the future. And take care and goodbye.